even if you haven't really had a trauma, but you just learn to like suppress your emotions, march on, be positive, or you learned to not express what you really feel. Like, well, we don't have space for that right now. Toughen up. And what happens is that lives in the body and it sucks up a ton of energy. You don't need to outrun worthlessness. You're worthy. And I sort of just received this whole download of there's nothing to outrun. You are who you are, and the greatness that's in you is unconditionally in you, and it's inevitable that you're going to live it, so you can just let go. And that was a massive day for me because I felt like for the first time at total peace with my body. The pain went away, the aches went away, and we did some EFT, and he sat there after like 4 minutes, completely and utterly dumbfounded on the couch, just completely jaw to the floor, speechless. And no pain in his body. He had an experience that he didn't know was possible, right? So this can be sort of like foundation shattering.
Hey everybody, it's Regan with Unreasonable Health, and today we're going to be diving deep into your subconscious mind. If you've ever wondered how to heal the body in the most effective, deep way possible, with the power of your own mind, I've got none other than Dr. Kim DeRamo here with me, and she is an expert at helping you uncover the subconscious triggers that are getting in the way of you living your best life. And so you'll want to hold on to your horses today because she's going to dive into deep things that we've never discussed on the podcast before. Her career started as an emergency room physician. She was very empathic and she was very energy sensitive. And she started realizing that there's deeper levels of disease that needed to be treated by going to the root cause. And so we'll be uncovering that today with Dr. Kim DeRamo. So Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here and connect.
Awesome. So tell me about your experience as an ER doctor. I mean, you're running from patient to patient, you're handling these big crises, and what was it that helped you get out of that kind of the conventional medical model?
When I actually first rotated in ER, I knew immediately this is what I'm going to do my residency in. I had already known I wanted like a more expansive career to, help people get to the root cause. I had a very intuitive sense of helping people heal. But I knew like for residency, I couldn't do family practice. I was really bored. I didn't want to do internal medicine. I didn't really believe in that pathway of like the chronically pushing the meds and never really resolving your disease. And so it was time to choose our residency. And I'm like, oh my God, I have one more chance at this, and started that rotation. And it was like a big hit because what I saw was the ER attending, unlike what I thought it'd be this like chaotic mess of scrambling around. He was so centered, and I recognized a level of presence, and that he was actually using expanded awareness, meaning he was aware of the whole ward, everything going on everywhere, and knew like what needed to be handled, what could be sent home, what needed to happen, and was operating very intuitively. So I saw right away, like, I want that. I want to learn that. I want to learn a deeper level of grounding and trusting my certainty in the most extreme of circumstances. So that was my training. And yeah, years later, I was working full-time ER thinking, okay, this is not the plan. I knew that was a stepping stone for something more expansive. And I started to get really contracted. Like I did not want that to be my life. And I didn't know, how do I find my next step? So I had to really just connect within, like, Kim, it's okay. You're right where you need to be. Let go of fear. You'll be shown. And I sort of kept feeling that over and over until I received a phone call from a colleague. And from there, found out about another colleague of ours who was helping start up an osteopathic medical school, and they wanted me there to teach the ER section. And so I moved to the middle of Tennessee from the center of the X that marks the spot in the city of Atlanta, like the chaos, the city. I had this
Yep.
townhouse and lots of friends, to like Cowville. but I knew it was the right thing. And it not only rebalanced my nervous system, because I could feel like the chaos falling off of me, but it taught me to develop that level of presence for what I'm doing now, which is a much deeper connection within myself and a much deeper way of seeing the patient and treating the body. And so it sort of just went from there to now develop what I'm now doing, which is all online. I've helped people realize that your health is not really just about the physical symptoms. It's really about the template within you, because your cells are constantly communicating and listening to what you think, how you feel about yourself, subconscious and conscious. And that there was a deeper way, a deeper thing that I could bring to really ignite powerful healing and leverage that and help a whole lot of people.
Jeez, what a cool story. And Tennessee is yeah, rural area, it sounds like. And but you fell in love. And now I mean, your practice is everywhere because you do primarily virtual, but you're located in California.
We're actually in Colorado, in southwestern Colorado. I was born in California,
Oh, excuse
um,
me.
but yeah, my family is in Boston. So we're in a lot of places. I moved back to Boston and started my practice. And there were a lot of people like, fix my knee, fix my headache, fix my thyroid disease, who thought they wanted, what I was offering. But when it came down to it, they were really just scraping the surface.
Right.
And so there were a fraction of patients who really were ready to do the deep work. And I realized, okay, I got to create my practice around this, so that instead of like, I'm going to fix you, I really wanted to invite in those people who knew that that was ultimately empty. Like, I've been trying it for 10 years. I'm ready for something deeper, or realized that somehow that, either they'd had a trauma right before that severe disease started, or pain syndrome started, and started to put together, wow, I think there's something deeper going on beyond the physical, who I could work with to do the much deeper work. And I've seen people have, unbelievable healing, especially when they're like a medical conundrum and they'll tell me I'm a total car wreck. I'm like, this is great. Come on in.
I can help. Wow. And so what is it that you've uncovered as you start peeling back the layers? What kind of mindset does a person need, first of all, to actually get to the level that you want to go to with them?
Well, one of the things I saw was that people would have, there are like three categories. They're like battling their body, right? Like, let's get ahead of this, let's do that. I'm not going to let these symptoms get me down. But there was like a personality that would go along with it, where they're constantly gearing up, gearing up. So they've got like adrenal fatigue or thyroid disease or autoimmune or Lyme disease that won't clear. Or there are people who've had some kind of like a trauma and they're still kind of victimized, like it's not complete. And they're, oh, my fibromyalgia, and everything ends up being heavy. And they're, it's a complaint all the time because they're just so oppressed by like, this just won't let go.
Mhm.
Or the people who are really living in that fight or flight, just constantly on edge, geared up, and bad, in the fear, like it's a primal fear of like a survival level fear. And so what I saw was, some people have been to like a million doctors and started to realize, I think there's something deeper that needs to happen. And, they're ready for a deeper kind of medicine. Like, I'm ready to look at what's really going on inside of me that maybe is difficult to see. Maybe it's uncomfortable. But when you're willing to be in the discomfort and let the energy move out, it's temporary. When you keep suppressing and you want the fix, just help me feel better, it's like a lifelong. It's not going to go anywhere. You're going to have to keep finding another fix, another fix. It's just, you're never going to really be free. And I think there's a lot of people realizing they're in that category. Like, it either becomes just too expensive, or your whole life now revolves around the remedies, or you're doing a lot and you're just like not really getting relief. And
Right.
that's usually when people say, all right, I'm ready for a new perspective. What am I not seeing? I'm willing to go through some discomfort, but to have really true healing that is lifelong.
Wow. And so what is it? I mean, do you feel like it's trauma that we bring from the past? Is it chemical exposure? Is it infections? I mean, what is it that you find that kind of keeps people from really living their full potential?
It's usually a way of being where they're in suppression. So trauma is like, I had an experience that I'm not really fully processing. Like I'm still
Mm,
suppressing it. I'm still gearing up against it.
yeah.
And that level of suppression, even if you haven't really had a trauma, but you just learn to like suppress your emotions, march on, be positive, or you learned to not express what you really feel. Like, well, we don't have space for that right now. Toughen up. And what happens is that lives in the body and it sucks up a ton of energy. And so, yeah, the immune system doesn't have that energy available to clear Epstein-Barr virus, or your adrenals are running all the time and it shoots out your thyroid. And no matter what you do, it's not repleting. Or you just don't have the energy for harmonious digestion. So you're like, let's fix your gut microbiome, let's kill the candida. But you always have to work hard at it because your foundational energy is being sucked away by all of that emotional suppression or trauma.
Wow. And from like a physiological perspective, is this like the cell danger response in the mitochondria that you see, or like the HPA axis dysregulation? I mean, what's going
Yes,
from
it will
for
directly
us nerds
affect
in the room? Yeah.
it'll directly affect those pathways, and it directly affects the amygdala, which sort of governs the autonomic nervous system, whether you're in like geared up fight or flight, your body never really recovers, or you can settle down into that rest and digest parasympathetic and get a lot of recuperation. So it will directly affect the hormonal pathways, your nervous system pathways, your immune system, gut microbiome, digestion. All of this is linked to your own, consciousness, because what we've seen is thought is neurotransmitters, and it's not separate from the immune system transmitters or the hormonal transmitters. Like they're cross connecting. They're all, 90% of your serotonin is created in the gut lining. So that's like an emotional related neurotransmitter, but it's in your gut. So it's not really just about like, oh, this is all in your head. It's a program, it's a template in the body, and it even affects the DNA. So, we've seen in studies with mice where they'll have like a trauma or a stimulus, a painful stimulus, and those mice will have a big stress response and lots of cortisol, and they'll have certain behaviors. So they would give them a shock and then expose them to cherry blossom smell, scent. And, of course, now they take away the shock, but every time they smell the cherry blossom scent, they go into that cortisol response, shuts down their
Yeah.
immune system. But what they saw was generation after generation of the progeny of those mice who had never been exposed to that trauma or that shock would have the same expression, meaning they
Wow.
would get in the cherry blossom scent and their immune system would react accordingly, their nervous system would react accordingly. It was carried down in the genetics to have that fight or flight trigger. And it's like all of us, if you've maybe never had poverty or starvation, but you're somehow like really, really tight about money, or in fear all the time about I can't trust men, or even just like a hypochondriasis, like I'm afraid I'm getting sick. Oh no. And your relationship with your body is sort of like altered, like you're not in harmony with the sensations, or, all right, I'm a little run down, let me nurture myself. So you go into this like trigger response that actually makes you sick because of those genetic and lineage patterns. So for me, when I'm treating a patient, I'm not just looking at like, who are you? How do you think? What's happened in your life? But beyond you, like, what about your mom, your dad? And I can read into the energies in those systems just when I meet someone. I mean, there's a lot you can, if you really listen, sort of start to decipher that a person is carrying that actually has nothing to do with their physical body or just their lifetime.
Jeez. So this whole concept of free will and agency might be compromised if you look at it just from a genetic perspective. There's so much we carry with us. What's interesting too is looking at the adrenal glands of newborns when the mother has been, under severe trauma or stress. Like their adrenal glands are like 3 times larger than typical infants. Even the Harvard study, you may have seen it, where they look at patients who have PTSD, and they'll find the prefrontal cortex is smaller and their amygdala is larger. just because that's the part of the brain that they're using. It's fascinating to see how this energetic expression translates into physiology.
And neuroplasticity is something you want to remember because it's not, oh God, now you're screwed. This is what you got to work with. Your brain is neuroplastic, and we can create major and significant changes in your neural pathways, in your brain formation, in what's getting transmitted in your amygdala, with mind body medicine and what I'm doing to shift things at the deepest level of who you think you are and how you function.
Man. So how have you been able to work through your own? Because we all inherit this. What was your kind of first step that you took?
So I had been very intuitive growing up and started to see a lot of how our cells are creating, our mind is connected. But it wasn't until medical school, so I'd studied years of mind-body medicine and was fascinated by it. But it wasn't until medical school when I developed a really obscure, severe illness and doctors couldn't figure out what was going on, that I really sort of had to integrate this real life. And tried to heal myself, mind over body, and everything I'd learned sort of like it just made me worse because now I was like hyper focused and I'm gonna, I know this is coming from something in me, so let me change this. But I didn't know really how to allow healing to happen. So it was a couple years of dealing with this severe, severe pain syndrome with inflamed joints and like severely painful knees, painful hips, so fatigue, and some kind of like autoimmune, dyscrasia in my body. And finally got diagnosed. And, after being told maybe you need antidepressants and nothing's wrong with you, I did get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and like another obscure autoimmune disease. And that's when I realized, like, oh, wait a minute. The guy's like, you're allergic to everything we injected on your arm. Everything is inflamed. And here's what you need to do. You need these medicines and you've got to control your environment and you'll never run again. And I thought, you know what? This is not true for me. And it was the first time like I snapped out of it and was willing to listen instead of trying to fix. And it just all happened in one day where everything I'd studied for years like kind of got integrated. Body, what do you have for me? What do I need to see? What's going on here? But in a receptive place, not a fear place. And
Mhm.
what I saw was, oh, you're living your life like escaping failure. So overworking, studying hard, pushing hard. I'd run a marathon. And I did love running, but there was a layer of escape where I'm gonna like stay busy and overcome. And it was like, what am I overcoming? Oh, I'm so afraid of failing. I'm scared to death of failing and being like, nothing, being worthless. So now it's like I could see, like, well, what is that? You don't need to outrun worthlessness. You're worthy. And I sort of just received this whole download of there's nothing to outrun. You are who you are, and the greatness that's in you is unconditionally in you, and it's inevitable that you're going to live it. So you can just let go. And that
Wow.
was a massive day for me because I felt like for the first time at total peace with my body. The pain went away, the aches went away. And over like a week of practicing that again and again, like remembering, nope, I can let this go. I can let this go every time the pain would come back. I just relaxed and softened my body. And within a week, the whole syndrome had fully reversed.
Sheesh. Well, it reminds me of that Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And so you just suddenly just had to be like comfortable in your own skin almost and listen to the truth that's within yourself. Like, hey, Kim, you're completely worthy. Just slow down. You got this. And then your body went into complete remission of all these crazy. Can you imagine what would your life be like now if you didn't actually tap into that?
I wouldn't, it's unthinkable because the aspirations and dreams were so big for what I'm here to be and what that meant to me. It'd be like suicidal. Like I can't imagine. But that's also like how it wakes you up. It's like, let me make it worse for her and turn up the juice so she'll let the shit go. So I think it's like life is actually serving you by making it so painful that you can't keep holding that together and you have to eventually surrender. And I
Yeah.
am really grateful that I had the insight and all the people I had studied in mind body medicine and like Herbert Benson from Harvard and Joan Borisenko. And there are so many amazing
Oh,
people that I sort of did already have a clue.
yeah.
So there was some divine intervention involved there.
Okay.
But I know like that's available for all of us if we're willing to have some courage to be with because it was so much fear. You don't want to let go, it will get worse. You don't want to let go, it'll just take me over and I'll never amount to anything. But so the insight was really the big gift because I could see, oh, wait a minute, this is not even true.
Wow. How powerful is that? Because think of how many people right now, even many of you listening to this, how many years of life are wasted because we're marching to the beat of external expectations or who we think we should be, and we're not being ourselves. And what you did was incredibly powerful because now you took your own transformation, your own healing journey, and you said, "Hey, I don't want to continue down this path." Literally, you couldn't. Your soul was like, "Sorry, Kim, we got other plans." But what have you done with that? I mean, you've trained, I don't know, thousands of people in mind body medicine. But man, let's talk about your work a little bit and what's it like if somebody comes in and engages with you, and how do you help them get away from their non-authentic self or whatever you want to call it? But yeah, let's start there.
I've worked with adults, and I've seen a lot of incredible things with kids too. And most of them are people who've had like really, really severe like conundrums. And a colleague will say, all right, you need to see Kim Duramo because what are we doing here? So one time, a man came and had very severe, unrelenting pain in his low back, couldn't bike anymore. Like his life was falling apart. He was on narcotics. And he was seeing a colleague of mine who is an acupuncturist, and she's like, nothing is helping this guy. And so when he came to see me, he said, well, I know you can't get rid of my pain, but maybe you just help me make it more manageable. And that's when I knew, like, oh, okay, we got a few layers of stuff going on here because he's got some really strong conclusions about, like, this is just who I am, and there's no way around it. Interestingly, he was an MD psychiatrist.
Wow.
So, sometimes when we get in the mind so much, we just form a lot of strong conclusions. So I kind of already knew, like, all right, we want to work with his nervous system and the pathways that are going on here. And I said, well, what if we could help pain go away? Would that be okay? And he sort of laughed because he realized, like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess that'd be okay. But it is actually important to get the person's conscious permission because I learned in my travels, everyone isn't actually on board for what you want to give them. You
Right.
assume they want healing, you assume they want to be free, and it's not actually always true. Sometimes they need to complete with some of that as part of their journey before they're ready to finish. And so it's a different way to complete that first. But this guy was on board. So let's play around with some stuff. And we did some mind body medicine, we did some EFT tapping, and he was, the next day called me up. Oh my God, I have no idea what you did, and I'm sure the pain's going to come back, but I have had the first pain-free day I've had in years. He hasn't taken any medication. He was completely dumbfounded. But note that there was also that idea, like, I'm sure this is going to come back.
Right. Yeah, there's skepticism. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just an entrainment. So
Yep.
it's a programming. And so a week later, he came back for his follow-up visit and he said, yeah, yeah, my pain's back. And, I don't want to do any of that psychological stuff. So let's just do like the physical stuff. And it actually is not psychological. People think mind body is psychology. And there is some connection there, but so much of it is like in your innate intrinsic blueprint of
Mm.
like everything you think about who you are. And then, yeah, the personality and psychology goes on top of that, but this is actually deeper. And so, it was actually a year later when he came back because at that treatment, he didn't really want to go there. He came back and it was a project he was working on because he was also an entrepreneur and knew that I was as well. He said, what do you think about this thing we're doing? And what do you think the applications for this would be? I said, you know what? I actually think what you're doing, which tapped into some unconscious patterns in the body, I said, I think this would apply to EFT tapping because a lot of people know how to use it, but they don't know, like, what do I tap on? What do I say when I'm doing the tapping? And we'll share some of what EFT is and how to use it. I said, I think this technology would really be amazing for that. And he said, yeah, I remember you used some of that with me. And Why don't you tell me a little more about that? So now he's like more a colleague to colleague. He's open, there's no threat. He's very receptive. And we did some EFT, and he sat there after like 4 minutes, completely and utterly dumbfounded on the couch, just completely jaw to the floor, speechless, and
Wow.
no pain in his body. He had an experience that he didn't know was possible, right? So this can be sort of like foundation shattering, right? Everything I think about who I am and what's true. And you've got to be willing to be in the recalibration of that, because some things, when you shift into health, may fall away, like relationship patterns or like what you're doing in your career. And there can be a lot of fear, like, will I be able to survive in this new template? But there's never an actual threat ever. It's always going to bring you higher. So he had a huge success story, got off of narcotics, was no longer in that
Wow.
pain syndrome.
Man, and that's amazing. So EFT, tapping, what is that?
So when we have these patterns, it's all connected in the nervous system. And we know from the study of mind-body medicine, that's directly connected to your immune system function, your digestive function, your hormonal function. Everything is very intimately connected. So when we allow, I think of it as like the third part of the nervous system. You've got your voluntary nervous system of, I'm going to push up the barbell. You've got your involuntary, which is fight or flight.
Yay, a party.
Your involuntary is like sympathetic, parasympathetic. So like fight or flight, geared up to run from the tiger, or relax and restore, peace and well-being, which is where we're meant to live most of our time. But the third nervous system is sort of what we're working with in Chinese medicine, with the meridians, with the electromagnetic channels. And we have teased out surgically where these channels reside that match like thousands of years of ancient studies on acupuncture meridians. These electromagnetic channels conduct electrical activity, energy. And so with EFT, we're actually working with those to clear and like neutralize any charge that's going on in those electromagnetic pathways that are part of your nervous system. So it's super easy because you got one on the outside of your eye. You could just breathe in and breathe out and gently tap on that channel. And I tell people, relax your shoulders, which allows more of a belly breath. That's
Hmm.
going to help your nervous system clear. And there's a sequence we can do also, beyond just using one point, to sort of clear the whole meridian system. And it's helpful to do it like if you're triggered, you're fired up, or you're like, I'm about to have a panic attack, or you're in the throes of like severe symptoms and you just don't know what to do. It can be a really powerful way to recalibrate your system. And what I've seen is symptoms completely and utterly resolving, even within minutes or, over some time and days. I've seen people have clarity they didn't have before, like, oh my God, this all started after blah, blah, blah happened, and have like an emotional release. Like, I didn't realize how much grief I had. And maybe there's tears, there's release of energy, there's, some sounds, crying, and the body will actually let go of all that grief it's been holding for like 20 years. I've seen people sometimes actually feel an intensification of the symptoms because it's now coming up where it was previously suppressed, but that's okay because it's coming up to come out. And you just do a little more EFT, or we'll do other things that I do with people that will actually help the body release it even more fully. But I've seen massive, unthinkable healing for so many people, like medical conundrums back and forth to the ER, hospitalizations. This one kid saw like, in Boston, pediatric neurology, pediatric orthopedics, pediatric psychiatry, this
Oh
pain
man.
management specialist, and no one could help this kid with RSD, which is like a reflex sympathetic dystrophy, weird neurological phenomenon we don't really understand from that model. And she resolved within a day of doing some EFT tapping.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. And with the acupuncture meridians, surgically, if you guys want to look it up, if you're like, where is that? Well, look up Bonghon ducks, and then the Koreans actually did the research to actually they found these little ducks that actually correlate to the acupuncture meridians, and then you can do some electrical resistance testing, and you can see where there's more electrical resistance, where those points are. So essentially, with tapping, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but you're just freeing up energy fields. And then once you move the energy, then your physiology can engage again. And so
Yes.
and I've had some of those spontaneous experiences too, where all of a sudden I'm just like, whoa, everything just like you change in an instant, whether doing energy work or getting acupuncture or with a psychic or whatever it is. So, but you've learned a way of really, tapping in quite literally to those subconscious drivers. And then you train other providers. I mean, you train doctors, you train acupuncturists, you train people in the healthcare space. What's it like to work with you on that? Like, how does someone learn, especially if they're not intuitive like you are?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who've had, I remember working in lots of groups of doctors who were changing their practice, doing something more expansive. And like all of us had had a personal experience that led to that, whether it was a loved one or you just someone, your patients, and you're like, I'm not really helping them. I want to learn more. Or for many of us, a personal experience where you then get introduced to a whole new paradigm and you're like, I gotta bring this to the world. And so when people work with me, the biggest thing we do is to shift their consciousness. And so one of the programs I have is called Be the Medicine, because I've seen as a practitioner, my level of presence in my body literally dictates my level of power of what healing can happen in the space or virtually on like a Zoom in the space that we're working in. And so a lot of practitioners, they don't really even have space for their own pain, their own grief, the levels of despair and hopelessness that they've unconsciously suppressed. They don't even realize is there. And so, like, to meet that brings you so much deeper into the human experience and so much deeper into surrender to like the life force, or you could call it the chi or the, ki that allows your body to be an expression of energy, of health, of light. And it is truly that your presence is what brings the healing. It's not about the pill. And we have a lot of studies to show that with like placebo, right? It's
Oh, yeah,
the level of
absolutely.
if that patient really has a deep heart connection with that practitioner, it's going to ignite a powerful healing response that otherwise is just kind of left on the table. No matter the strongest medicine in the world, nothing happens. Or like the best organic food and like, you're still sick. What is it that really ignites a deeper level of healing? And I've come to see my greatest leverage point I can have as a physician is my own embodiment of like, who am I being? Because now I can see things I would never have been able to see. I can sense very subtle things. I can know when to just stay quiet and when there's something to be said. And like your words can be the medicine. It could be one word, but if
Yeah.
you're listening deeply, there's a timing, there's a knowing, you're following the flow of that life force, you're guided. So, I'm not a healer. I'm never going to heal anybody, including myself. But can I be a space and consciousness that allows unthinkable healing to happen? Yes.
Love that. So, I mean, because that essentially just implies that we live on a planet that is basically it's a healing agent for us. I mean, we have the sun, we have the moon, we have all these beautiful fields of energy that flow through your body. But you've done an amazing work in learning how to get out of the way so you can just let that healing come through. Universe, God, whatever you want to call it, it's there. And I think everyone on this podcast, they'll probably agree. They're like, yeah, we've all experienced that sense of awe and overwhelm. So this is phenomenal. I really, and for those of you who've never met Kim in real life, she's got the best energy. I mean, very high vibration, to say the least. Kim and I met at a strategic coach event. Ben Law is a good friend of mine, is teaching it in Santa Monica, and I was like, "Oh, she's a doctor. She's awesome. I bet she's just got the best healing capabilities." So, I'm so glad to have you on the show, and I really want to get to you. For those of you who are in my Go Wellness community, I want you guys to consider this. Think about the impact you could have on people's lives if you put some of this energetic medicine into your practice. it can make a huge difference for the thousands of people that you touch. And we appreciate the work you do. But one reason I wanted Kim to come on is so you guys could meet her. And then for those of you who are looking to take your healing to the next level, I also wanted to bring Kim on so that you have a chance to work with an amazing doctor. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and work with you?
So, drkimd.com is my website, and we run the Be the Medicine course once or twice a year. There's also a free EFT mini course people can have just to kind of get a sense of like, what is EFT? How do I use it? Because you would start using it on yourself. I very quickly started using it with my patients and my colleagues and teaching everyone. And if people, are interested and have questions about the work, they can email support@drkimd.com. And this really is something that activates whatever medicine you're doing. Like there's a reason you're using the modalities you're using. Any of them can be activated to a 10x. Any of them can be used to a heightened level. And it really has to do with who you're being, what you're seeing, and how you're approaching the medicine. So I'm super excited to bring this to the world because I'm ready, to help create a conscious medical system where we live free from disease and we understand the body can heal itself. And the medicine we're doing is to activate and support that instead of like overriding it.
Man, well, and that's where you and I share a similar vision is imagine if we lived in a world where there was actually a choice when it came to healthcare. Because right now, everyone's just blinded by the allopathic medical model. And we think, and it's 100 years of brainwashing. It goes back to the Flexner report and even earlier than that. But 100 years of brainwashing has, left us in a vulnerable position where our disease is profits for the pharmaceutical and the insurance companies. So the work that you're doing is phenomenal. And any way that I can support you, I want to. And so I just in kind of closing questions, if you had to name two books that have been super inspirational for you in your journey as in the mind body medicine, what are those two books?
Okay, I would say Power versus Force by David
Oh
Hawkins.
yeah, that's a classic.
It's like a biblical thing for me of how I use that in the work I'm doing with understanding that consciousness is frequency and directly determines what's happening in our cells and in our experience. So that is a great book. The other one I would say is Reality Unveiled. If you've ever read that, it's by Ziad Masri. It is an incredible book about kind of the metaphysical and how it pertains to the physical. And I think there's so many I could say, but that's just one that as you read it brings you into a deepened awareness of who you are and a deepened space of your own power.
Wow. Reality, can you say that again?
Reality Unveiled.
Unveiled. Okay. I'll check that one out. That sounds phenomenal. Well, Kim, this has been so fun, and we got to have you on again. And everybody, if you like the show, make sure you share it with your friends, family, loved ones. If you're looking to take your health to the next level, reach out to Dr. Kim. Get in touch with her. We'll provide all the links and in the show notes. So appreciate you guys. Kim, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you. So great. I'm so glad we got to connect.